Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Robin Gould. I'm so glad that you've joined the program here today on Messianic Lamb Network. I hope you enjoy the time that we have together. I had an archive show last week, and this week I am back live, so I'm very excited to see you. And I'm excited to get started. It's an awesome Torah portion. Of course, I think they pretty much all are awesome Torah portions, some easier to understand than others, but this one tends to get a lot of attention. And so before we just get started, I want to remind you the future begins now. I always say that every beginning and ending of every show to remind you that there are second chances, there are third chances, there are fourth chances to continue to get back on the wagon for whatever's going on in your life. And always remember that this moment is creating your future. So in this moment, be present. Let's be together and talk about things that will encourage and inspire us, challenge us, and move us forward. And also embrace now. And that's something that's not always easy to do because we have some people that are very now focused and some people that are very future focused by the very way that they approach information on this planet. I'm a future focused person, but when I'm with you, I really just want to be present with now. And I just want to be that sort of a voice of now. So let's just get right into what we're talking about today. So, this Torah portion this week is called it's Balak, and it goes from I think Numbers 22:2 to 25:9. Now we obviously never have time to go through all of the portion. I always read all of the portion myself, but in our little hour, maybe a little under an hour. I mean, we just don't have time to get into all of how much information is presented there and how many concepts and themes. We could really just go in so many directions because the Torah is just such a deep and in-depth book of so many challenges. And so we'll just try to cover a few things. Now, before I get started, I always, every now and then, want to make this disclaimer. Now, if you are familiar with me, if you've heard of my name or or just knew me from teachings or places I've traveled or whatever, but if you just heard my name and you're like, where have I heard that name? It's probably because I'm one of the authors of the Becky books, Beky, Building and Encouraging the Kingdom of Yeshua, which is a series of books on different tiers of learning, different levels of learning to help people to understand the Torah. People who have maybe been raised in Christianity only and really never knew things about the Torah, and they've never really had explained to them. So we write these books, all female authors, and we write different books about the Sabbath and the new moon and Hanukkah, and I have a trilogy on the dietary laws. I also have a book on divorce and remarriage in the Bible. So that's what we do. So if you've heard my name, I just want to make sure you understand what those books are is to help people to be faithful and obedient to the Torah to the extent that we can be obedient to the Torah outside of the land. Maybe you're in the land, but for a lot of the people in my audience, I would say they're not in the land, meaning the land, meaning Israel. And I want to just make this disclaimer. So as I come from an attachment perspective, and if you know anything else about me, I'm an attachment specialist, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and a religious educator. That's what my doctorate's in. So I am, very I promote attachment. I work as an attachment specialist. So I'm always going to approach the Bible from an attachment perspective. And this is exciting and I love doing it, but I never want people to get the wrong idea. And you'll know by my books, the things that I write about, that obedience to me is what we do. It's implied, it's understood. Okay. I don't mention in our discussions about to make sure you stop at stop signs when you're driving. I just assume you know that. So the assumption here is that I believe that obedience to the Torah in all areas that we can be, we do. I also understand that there's a territorial aspect to the Torah with the land of Israel. And that's a lot to tease apart, but sometimes people can get a little confused with that. And we'll talk about that another time. But I just want to make sure that what's not happening is, as I'm teaching my view, I'm sharing with you my perspective, that this is not confused with what I would say, progressiveness going toward deconstructing to reconstructing. That's not what I'm doing. And so while my themes are so, grace-filled, which is should be, right? The Torah is grace. Um, always was and never changed. But I don't want people to get this idea that I have, gone in other directions. I have not. But I do like to illuminate things about attachment and about what I believe this relationship, what the themes of the relationship are. And so just don't ever get that confused. And if you ever get confused, check out my Becky books. You'll see, well, it's from a kind voice, and I think it always really, well, most of the time, really should be. I don't challenge obedience to the Torah, but I really just believe the Father knows each and every one of us where we are in this journey. He loves you, He loves me, and I just didn't want that ever to be confused. So every now and then, I just like a little disclaimer. So I'm not really progressive. I'm more regressive. It's basically going back to those ancient paths. And we're going to talk about going back to the ancient path today in our discussion. And I'm excited to have this discussion with you because I think it's extremely timely. I see this happening in my work, in the people that I am talking to and dealing with, and I'm seeing a theme. And so I love when that happens, when something just keeps coming to me, keeps information that just keeps getting to me. And I feel like, you know what, this is where we are to go today. And the Torah portion today I was thinking I would really want to bring up this certain theme. And then the Torah portion just delivered me right to the doorstep of this theme. So we'll talk. So first of all, let me just talk about, I'm just going to nutshell a little bit this Torah portion, and then we're going to read just part of it. And we'll talk about some themes here. So this is Balak. He is actually the king of Moab, and they worshipped false gods. But this is the king of Moab. And there's a prophet named Balaam. And this, what the king of Moab wants is he wants Balaam to curse the people of Israel. And so what happens is, as Balaam is traveling, he's on his donkey. He's had this donkey for a long time, and but the donkey is aware and observes, prior to Balaam seeing it, this angel of God, and that was put there by God as an obstruction to do this favor or this command for the king of Moab. And so 3 times what happens is the donkey thwarts the directions given by its driver, by the rider, which would be Balaam, the prophet. And so in 3 different ways. And so it's in detail in the portion. And what happens is, when Balaam actually does try to pronounce these curses, what happens is, flowing from God himself, blessings instead. And so it just goes into the prophetic discussion of Messiah. Okay. So with the people, of course, this is what happens. We can't curse what God's blessed. You can't bless what God's cursed, right? We can come into agreement with God and bless people as is appropriate. We can't go against God. We don't have that power. Despite all these books you're going to read about all the power you have as a creator, you don't. You're an assembler of the things the Father has allowed you stewardship over. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's also not get behind God. And he does give us the ability and wisdom. And he gives us the ability to assemble his goodness. And that trajectory moves us forward in holiness. And we've got to really make sure we understand that. What happens is, those that were blessed curse themselves, because what they did, they succumbed to the charms of the daughters of Moab. So that was what happened. They went into these illicit relationships for which they were forbidden. And what happened was they were seduced, and they went into idol worship. So then you get then there's this whole thing about this Midianite princess. You read the story. We don't have time to go into it, but it's a great story. And then Pincus actually kills these people. And if you ever hear about Pincus, when people get really, I'm as mad as Pincus, well, you can see why, right? And this ends up stopping this plague. So anyway, that's the nutshell. And you can go ahead and read, all of that. We're going to just look at a bit here, and I just want to make a couple points. I mean, really, we just have a little less than an hour, so we're already like 12 minutes in. So, and Balak the son of Zippor saw that Israel had done what they had done to the Amorites, and so Moab was in great dread of the people because there were many. Moab was overcome with fear of the people of Israel. So a lot of times you're going to notice that it's very interesting. I notice that I try to be really respectful of people with different faiths, different beliefs, and even in my family, I don't, not everybody in my family, they don't share my religious views, and people that I love and care about, and that doesn't really affect our relationship in terms of the core of just I love people and they love me and we are family, whatever. But many times what happens is I'm not bringing things up, they are. They're bringing, not picking anyone in my family here. I'm just saying you might notice that. Like, you might not be bringing anything up. You might be saying, I'm going to find neutral territory for which this relationship thrives in these neutral areas. And then you have your friends in faith that you pursue some of your deeper thoughts and pray together and talk God stuff, right? And that's how a lot of people are. But sometimes you'll find like you're not bringing things up, but your family is. It's almost like they're wanting to have these discussions. And then, of course, many times, I'm not saying this is happening in my family, I'm just saying people can get berated for responding. I generally won't bring a lot of things up, but I will respond when information is brought to me, especially if it's done in any sort of like an aggressive way. I do have a very strong loyalty factor to me. It's one of my strengths. I'm super, super loyal to my friends, to my God. I am loyal. And so when there's, someone wants to come at my God, I'm going to respond in loyalty. And that's just one thing that you'll always get from me. So if we have a different religious belief, or you don't believe in God, you're atheist or whatever, don't bring it up to me unless in a way that attacks my God, because I will respond. Now, I won't respond meanly, but I will respond factually, which feels mean when people disagree with you. Because when you make a really, really good point, like the idea that there's no such thing as the possibility of nothing exploding and becoming everything. Something had to make something be explodable and then instigate that explosion. So whatever you get it down to that base note, there has to be a note. There has to be a note. So when you assert that in any sort of even an apologetic manner, just stating facts, the people get dread. Okay. They're dreading that because they know deep down, well, that's got to be true because that's factual. And when I say factual, I can't prove it, but I can because it has to be the way it is. You see what I'm saying? So here you're seeing that the king of Moab was like, ooh, this is a lot of people. They're very blessed. And I'm actually not going to read a ton more. Let's see. Let's get to the donkey. Okay, so here's what's really neat. You hear about the donkey a lot. You hear a lot of that. I love this. I had a friend, she said, if the father can speak through a donkey, he can certainly speak through a woman. We were talking about gender and how the patriarchal system will be silencing of women and in absolute ways it should not and really shouldn't do that. But what's interesting is that this king knew that these people were just too mighty. So he wants to have them be cursed. And so they, have a plan. And let me see. Let me go into, let's see I just want to get into where the donkey is, because I think I'm going to make a few points that'll take a minute here. But it's talking about how numerous they are, right? That came out of Egypt and they covered the face of the earth, right? Like, this is a big people. So curse them for me. Perhaps I should be able to fight against them and drive them out. So what this evil king is saying is like, if we can just weaken them and get them to be cursed, then I can attack them. They will be vulnerable and they won't be able to fight the way they now, there's so many of them. Now, doesn't that bring you back to Pharaoh and what he said? He's like, the minute these Hebrews realize that they are more than us and they are smarter, better, stronger, and because they basically were, a very blessed people, we had better cage them up. They're prosperous, they're super intelligent, they raise their families well. When you have a strong family, you have a strong society. When you have a weak family, you have a weak society. And the Torah is nothing if it isn't about family. And it really, really is. So anyway, so the father's intervening and he's saying, these people are blessed. No, you can't curse them. And so he says to the princes of Beelzebub, the prophet says, go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. Because this would be a fruitless mission, right? That would not be anything that would turn into anything good. And so let's just keep going. I mean, read the story. It's a great story. Let's see. They're really tempting Balaam and all of that. And they, were offering him silver and gold and just all kinds of different wealth. And he's like, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God to do less or more. So keep going. Let's see. But he rises in the morning, he saddles his donkey, and he goes with the princes of Moab. So this is what happens. Okay. Because he went, just even went, God's anger was kindled. Okay, now, I'm a parent. I have 2 sons. And I want to say it was just when they were little, but it's still now. There are times where I might say, do this, and they don't do it. Or when they were younger, here's what you need to do. You need to do your chores. You need to not treat that friend this way. You need to make sure you write a thank you note. I mean, just all the different things that you do when you're parenting, and they don't do it and you get angry. You didn't get your homework done. You didn't, participate constructively in a social activity that we were as a family. You were pouting, you were whatever you were. And so when we read about God's anger being kindled because he went, remember, just take a second to absorb this sentence. God's anger was kindled because he went. So one of the things that I really, really love to remind people is that the things we do impact the God we serve. Now, I don't want that to scare you in a bad way. I want that to scare you in a good way. I want you to understand your God is powerful. Your God is righteous. Your God is there. He's listening, he's present, and he's interactive. I don't want you to think that God is just words on a page and things that you do. It's an encounter. It's your God. He is your father. You are his child. The things you do impact him, produce feelings in him, and cause him to react. So I'm saying that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you really understand that, the word is for reverence. When you revere how powerful God is and what his role of sovereignty is over your life, you're going to be wiser. You won't do stupid things as much, or maybe never again. Who knows? Get mature. I still do stupid things. I'm working on it. I'm letting the Father work this out in my life. And remember, just remember that this is a two-way relationship. It is a relationship the Father benefits from. It is a relationship where the Father gets angry in. He has emotions, and he will respond to the things you do. And you'll respond to the things he does. And you'll have honest conversations with him about how you feel about things, or at least I hope you do. Authenticity, okay? Really, really be present. This is a relationship. So the angel of the Lord takes his stand in the way of his adversary. Okay, so God sends this messenger, this angel, to oppose this action. Now he's riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. So he was all ready to just head into that area. And the donkey sees the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand. So the donkey sees this, not the prophet. Okay, interesting. And the donkey responds because the donkey sees. And the donkey turned aside out of the road, and he went to the field. So he was on a path, on a road, on a path. I want to visit this later in the point I'm going to make. But the donkey veered him off the path, off the road, into a field. And so what does Balaam do? He strikes the donkey to turn her back to the road. Like, I'm the rider here. You're the one I ride. You do what I say. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on either side. So they encountered this again on their journey, on their way. And when the donkey sees the angel of the Lord, what does the donkey do? He's already been struck. She pushes against the wall and presses Balaam's foot against the wall. So what does he do? He strikes her again. A prophet didn't see this. The donkey did. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. She just basically stopped and laid down. Now this angered Balaam. His anger was kindled. Remember, God was angered at Balaam. Now Balaam is angry at his donkey, who is actually protecting his righteousness to not go and make a mistake. So he strikes the donkey with his staff. I hate that poor donkey. All I can hope and pray is that the Father who had commissioned the donkey for such a task as this made the donkey impervious to pain, right? Because remember, Stephen was taken out of his body before he was stoned. I really depend on that. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey. Okay. Now this is interesting. This story is so interesting to me. The Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam says to the donkey. Now, do you notice that it doesn't say, and Balaam was shocked to hear his donkey speaking to him? Okay. I know prophets see a lot of different things in the Bible. Seas parting, plagues, just enormous things that happen that are incredible. So maybe in the life of a prophet during this time, a talking donkey wasn't really a big surprise. Maybe open the mouth of the donkey might not be literal, but I don't know. I just don't know. But this information was conveyed from the donkey to Balaam. He says, he asks him, he said, the donkey says, "Why have you struck me 3 times?" And here's what Balaam says: "Because you have made a fool of me." Okay, now it's just the 2 servants and him and the donkey. So just in front of the servants, he's been made a fool. Now we know that Israel is an honor-shame culture, and there's shame, and that's a big deal. Like, being shamed is a big deal. Okay, it's a big deal in our culture too. It's just taking on different forms because now you have professional victims that take shame on as an identity and wear a badge for it. And this is something that we see all the time that drives us crazy. But moving on and not digressing into that topic, but he says, "You made a fool of me." And he said, "I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you." He'd rather kill that donkey and then walk? What? And the donkey says to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Don't you know me and the way I ride, the way I traverse, right? Is it my habit to treat you this way? So he's saying, isn't this out of the ordinary? And he says, no. Then, and after then, only then, after the donkey spoke and argued with him and reasoned with him, have I ever done this before? Okay. And he answered, no, you've not done this before. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. Okay, has this happened to you? You think you're being thwarted and it's so horrible and awful and it's upsetting and you hate that person or you're really, really upset. But when you step back and you get some reason, why would this be happening? I don't know, maybe God's at work. Oh, you think maybe God's at work. Your eyes are open and you see God at work, right? All was there, but your eyes weren't open. So he sees the angel of the Lord with this drawn sword, and he bowed down and he falls on his face, just as a prophet should do. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to oppose you because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live. Because it would be better that he would be killed than to go and do this perverse thing. You would definitely die with more honor, less sin. Then Balaam says to the angel of the Lord, I have not sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now, therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only the word I tell you. So he must have known there was some sort of capitulation or malicious intent or just, I don't know, just sort of peer pressure. Maybe he would fall into the loyalty of this prophet was at risk. So he says, keep going, but only say what I say. Okay, now you're walking into this. Okay, now you're going to say, you're not avoiding this encounter. You're having it, and I'm going to dictate it for you. Okay. So Balaam went on with the princes of Balak. And when Balak hears that Balaam had come, he comes out to meet him, right? And he says, did I not send to you to call you? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to honor you? Now remember, honor and shame, right? And he says to Balak, he says to him, he says, behold, I have come to you. Have I now any power of my own to speak anything? Like I'm going to say what I've got to say. The word that God puts in my mouth, that much I speak. And so if you keep going, you're seeing, okay, I will obey your summons to show up, but I won't say what you want me to say to this blessed people so they'd be cursed. Now, let me just get to some of my notes here. I wish we had more time, but I honestly believe that we are in a season of donkeys right now. I'm seeing this in many ways with many people, and it takes different forms, but I'm just hear me out, because listen to this whole program. Remember my disclaimer in the beginning so that you don't get confused with what I'm saying. I don't want this to be taken out of context. Because if you just edited this little show and took this little piece out of context, this might confuse someone. And everything has to be taken in context. So I'll say this. As Balaam was on the path forward, which looked like the defined road. The father had a different plan of where he would be, and he used a donkey to do it, to, veer him off into a field off the road, to veer him into narrow places where he would be stuck against the wall, right? Couldn't turn right or left. So there are people, and particularly since we've had such a really rough couple of years, right? Really, 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 really rough, couple of years. We've had a lot of social upheaval, medical upheaval, different politics have been so challenging, and people have been divided. It's been really difficult. And what happens is, when we go through global things like this, we go through painful experiences, it changes us. It should. It moves us into another season, maybe a more desperate season, maybe a more reflective season. I don't know how that change happens, but that change happens. Now, one thing about me I've noticed is that pretty much my drug of choice has been learning and information. And that's why I just continued on with degree after degree after degree, because it's like I could never get enough. And even when I wasn't studying for my, bachelor's, master's, PhD, whatever, I was always reading and studying so much information, loving so much information, always really a lot of work, right? And enjoyed it. It was a hobby. It was also my belief system. It was my ideology. It was everything wrapped into one. I really enjoyed it. And then what happened was all kinds of things started happening. And I, for a lot of reasons, needed to pull back from how much information I was taking in. Now, that's scary for a person who's this lifelong learner. Learning comes in different forms, though. Learning isn't just taking information in. Learning is also digesting information, reflecting on information. I always call it putting it into the crock pot and letting it simmer until the meat falls off the bone. You know what I mean? Give it time. And then walking out and learning. So, I thought I knew what a good parent looked like until I became a parent. And as I walked through being a parent, I learned every day just about what it took to be a parent, just how it felt to be that sleep deprived, not because you were having a great time because you wanted to, but because your kids kept you up. You learn different things by doing them. I could read all the parenting books in the world before I had children. It didn't mean that I understood that. It didn't mean I learned that. It means I was informed that that was the experience other people talk about, but I had not had that encounter. And so we go into the daily devotions, and don't take this wrong. If you're a person that you wake up in the morning and part of your morning routine or your evening routine is just you get some scripture, it's just peaceful, you've got your iced coffee here in Florida and you're just going through something, it's so nice, and maybe you write in your journal, whatever, awesome. Have nothing. Okay. But if you're a person right now who's struggling in a certain way, and you know who you are, and you know what I'm talking about, you feel like you had information overload, and you're trying to make sense of the information that you've gotten over the past decade, and how is it supposed to manifest now? What am I supposed to be doing? How do I feel? There are people who are feeling, many people, highly respected people, wonderful, amazing, loving, grace-filled people that love the Father. They're like, I'm struggling with just settling down and learning more new things. So it makes me think of this, and I call this a season of donkeys. You might be in a season of a donkey. Balaam the prophet was learning about how to serve the Father in relationship that was not perverse to the Father by riding a donkey. He wasn't reading his Torah. He was riding the donkey towards something that could be confrontational. I'm not saying don't read your Torah. What I'm saying is, if you're in a season of riding the donkey, until your eyes are open to see, wait a minute. Sometimes there's obstructions put in our path on purpose for our good, just like here. Maybe your aversion to having a long 3-hour study session, maybe that's just supposed to be because you're in a crockpot phase. You're riding the donkey and it's stopping and you're like, no, I need to be moving forward, going forward. You might just not need to move forward for a minute. The future begins now, which means there's a now to have. You might be in a place where all the things you've learned for the past decade or two, or year, or 3 years, or whatever, need to percolate and need to be manifested. They need to be walked out. You might need to embark on a journey on the donkey and just ride forward, but have your eyes open for, if this isn't right, stop me. So the idea of the daily devotions is really just a man-made invention of how to study. It doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. And I think it's great for some people. And I did that for years and years and years of my life, like 30 years of my life, I did that. But there came a time where it's like I came to this season of my life where I feel like I need to get to the end of the circle. Now, that might sound weird to you, getting to the end of the circle, but really that's how the Torah is, and that's how life is. It's a circle. You read the Torah in a circle, and you start over and you start over, but getting to the end of the circle would be this circuitous thing called life, where you continue to learn in cycles. Now, let's just talk about like exercise or working out. When people lift weights, you know what they do? They eat some food, so they have some energy, and then they might go to the gym and they lift weights. But they need protein for the muscle to build. So they go back home. They eat protein, and then they rest that muscle. And then after it's rested and the protein's been utilized and the muscle's enhanced and strengthened, they go again. They reach the end of the circle. They're always in a circle, though. So sometimes you're in a season of donkey riding. It's maybe you don't need more information coming in. You need an encounter with the information you have. Now, as you go throughout the day and maybe you have a conversation with somebody and you're tempted to tell a lie because it would be easier, and you don't. You've read the Torah in your decision, because that means that part of the Torah is written on your heart. You read it and you didn't lie. And you suffered the consequences of telling the truth, which might have been a more difficult answer that required more engagement to solve the problem or whatever came out of that. The Torah on your heart. Don't forget, that's the goal, is to get it on your heart. Doesn't mean you didn't read it. It's just that you read it on your own heart. If you're in a season of riding donkeys and getting thwarted, pay attention to being thwarted. Don't worry if you're like, oh, I just feel like I can't concentrate, I can't settle. It might mean, and this is a season I'm in, and I do read the portion, but I might be like, I actually just need a break from information overload, and I need to deal with the information I have. And I need to walk this out in my family and in my daily life and in my prayer life and dealing with my friends. And maybe there's less information I'm able to take in. So I'm taking in a lot less information. But here I am talking to you because I'm having experiences with what I've learned for 30 years. And I'm like, oh, the Father's opening my eyes to I read that 5 years ago and I get that today. Because I'm in a season of donkeys. I would have not understood that. If you had told me this, I would say 5 years ago. Nope, that person is probably lazy. They're probably just not willing to commit. They're just not willing to jump through the hoops, we are supposed to jump through to be believers. right? But this is a rigid idea of the way to pursue the Father. Some people read the Torah in spurts and they can't get enough for a spurt of time. Then it's like sowing seed, covering it with dirt, watering it, waiting, watching it grow, and harvesting it. That's information. That's soil. That's how people are made. That's how we're compared to our soil. Soil is at different phases of intervention. Sometimes you sow the seed, you cover it with soil, you water it, and then you wait and you let the rain and everything that comes from the sky deal with it. It's the Father cultivating in you what He's planted. And you just watch, and read what's already on your heart without guilt and shame and agony. Okay, I'm not saying don't study your Torah. I'm saying if you're in a season of donkeys, don't despise that. But don't waste it either. Never waste a good trip on a talking donkey. If you are in that place where less information serves you and teaches you more, that's good for you in this season. And if you are obsessed with just learning something, the Father gives you the desires of your heart. Go for it and be in that place. Because I was in a place of learning for years. Now I'm in a place of encountering and dissecting and understanding and de-intellectualizing things that I was wrong on. And I need to backpedal a little bit and reevaluate some things. The more information I get isn't always the better, though sometimes it is. But in and out of season, we are to be prepared. So we don't want to waste a good talking donkey. And we have to be amazed at, look at I got derailed. What does that mean? Because the Father interacts with me in my life and intervenes when I need to have a pause, when I need to be actively passive on purpose, to have a minute to rest. We get this idea that it's all us. And that is one of the places where we go wrong. We think it's all our responsibility, this relationship with the Father, which makes it a one-way relationship. Actually, let me give you an example. When babies are up until a certain age in their development, there's something that they haven't developed. It's called object permanence. And I'll give you an example. So a baby, a little cute baby, would be at that age where they could play peekaboo, let's say. So they would, close their eyes and you would be gone, and they would open their eyes and laugh hysterically. Do you know why peekaboo is so fun? It's because that child hasn't developed what's called object permanence. And what that means is that object is permanently there despite what you see. They think that they closed their eyes and made you disappear, and when they opened them, you reappeared because of what they did. That's a true thing. But eventually they start figuring out that they've closed their eyes, you're still there. They open their eyes, you're still there. Object permanence. That's something in the spiritual world that is going to start reflecting some maturity in us, that we're developing and growing out of milk, getting more into solid food. I'm developing that now. It is the Father's responsibility to parent me. So He will divert that donkey so that I don't act in ways perverse in His face, because He doesn't want me to. And I don't want to. So I'm not in charge of this donkey that I'm riding. And that's okay. And doesn't mean I'm not striking that donkey and just striking that donkey. Keep going on the path. This is the road. And the donkey's like, nope, field, rock in a hard place, pressed against a wall. That's where I need to be. I need to be there. When I shut my eyes, God doesn't go away, and I don't make Him reappear when I open them and start reading. He's always there. His job is to parent me. And I am not my co-parent. The Ruach is the co-parent. Okay? That's very important to remember. This is not your gig. You get to respond and love to your Father, and he responds to you. But he's the leader, he's the guide, not you. So when you could if I give you a picture of this, I want to give you an attachment picture, because I always want you to carry with you from these programs something that you can picture. So if this is a time for your brain to be not having a lot of incoming as much on you, where you're like, I've got to work so hard and figure this out. And if you're in that season of rest, I want you to picture something. If you're genuinely in that place, you're just like, I just feel like I can't take more in right now. I want you to picture your parent, your father, the parent. Pardon the allergies. And I want to picture when you're like a little kid, and if you had good parents, you were tired. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, and you've been playing and doing all the things you do, and your father just recognizes you're tired, and they take you and they just lie you down on the soft couch or the bed, and they cover you with a blanket, cover you up, and they say, sleep. I'm here. Nothing bad's going to happen. You're going to go into sleep. Your little body's going to heal and rest and recover and rejuvenate and recharge. And you're going to wake up from the nap, and I'm going to have a snack for you. And we're going to be together. Please let that be your picture. Picture that blanket just being put right over you, comforting you, allowing you rest from all your labor. And when you're sleeping, maybe you're dreaming, maybe you're whatever, but you are repairing, you're absorbing, you're restoring. Have you ever had an experience in life where you're just having this sort of a day, and then you take a nap, and you get up from your nap and you're like, oh, I feel better. Whatever that problem was, I can tackle it. I'm not even as upset with that person as I thought, because I'm rested. I had some time away. I'm all right. Because your father is holding down the fort. No matter what it looks like around you, if things look like it's falling apart, he has put you on a donkey that will help you. I think that if you're tired, that doesn't mean you failed. And I think people go to that place of, I'm a failure because I'm tired. It might be that you've worked really hard, and you might have worked over hard because you think it's all you. You forget you're a kid. Time to be born again as a little child and raise up in that humility. Israel is an example of this for me. I remember one time, actually, I think this was my fourth trip to Israel, my last trip to Israel, maybe. I was not feeling well. And I had traveled with my mentor, who I could just listen to her teach hundreds of hours long. And I just always could, there was never a lesson too long for me to have my attention span, but I was not feeling well. I had a health issue. And I remember I was like spending some time resting in my room. We were staying at an archaeological dig site. They had these caravans that the archaeologists would stay in, and we'd stay in there at Tamar when we would stay there, way out in the wilderness, in the desert. And I remember just being like, I think I'm feeling like a failure because I'm not able to participate in all the things I want to participate in, but I just needed a lot of rest, a lot of walking in the desert, just kind of alone, and just dealing with like, what does it mean to feel this way, especially when I'm in the land of all places? And I was there for Sukkot. It's like 2 years ago. And yeah, this was that trip. This was the last trip I went to Israel. And it was interesting because I was walking. There's a dining hall where, you'd eat, and the kitchen was. And I was walking from my room to the dining hall by myself, not a long walk, but just just a little ways. And I was walking, and the dining hall is always the place I would study in between. It's very peaceful in there, just tables and chairs. And I don't know, just something about studying in there was always like incredible to me. I picture it now when I do Torah study. Like I picture I'm there. I even look on my phone at pictures of the dining hall that I took just so I could feel like I transported back there, because we would sit there and be so peaceful. The sun would be streaming in. There's pink flowers at the doorway as you go in. It's just, I don't know, it's just a really great memory. It just feels like home to me. And even when I would sit in there, when I wasn't feeling well, I really just didn't have a lot of stamina. So I'm walking toward maybe lunch or dinner. And as I was walking toward the dining hall, I just felt like I heard the Spirit of the Lord speak to me and gave me a scripture, just a very specific scripture, just like whatever it was. And I was like, what is this? All of a sudden, it popped in my head. It was really strong, right between my caravan to the dining hall. And so, okay. So I got into the dining hall. This was for lunch. And I asked somebody, hey, I got to check your Bible out. Or no, I actually had my Bible with me. I remember it because I remember putting a flower in there. And I opened up the scripture to that exact, and I didn't even know what that scripture was. It just came to my head. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. And it was a specific scripture about Sukkot. I didn't even know it. I didn't even know that it was about Sukkot. I had such bad brain fog. I wasn't feeling well. But there it was, very specifically about an aspect of Sukkot that I've been thinking about. What happened to me in that moment was I realized that I am God's responsibility. I am not my own. I need to make wise choices. I need to be good to people. I need to obey the Torah. But my Father told me between the dining hall and my caravan that he will talk to me wherever I am and say what needs to be said, whether I'm sitting in my Bible reading it or not. He reminded me who was in control. It was not me, it was him. Very specific message there. You can be sick, you can rest. You can be out of sorts, you can be all jumbled up. And I'm here, nap, rest. When you wake up, I'm going to have a snack. I could cry talking about that. But anyway, Israel is an example of this. When you go to Israel, if you've never been, and if you've been, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you go to Israel is just, if you've never been, it might be something you don't expect. Like you are expecting this Israel to be this certain thing. You've built it up in your mind, or you have this idea, it's your homeland, and you have all these attachments or whatever. But then you go to Israel and you get off the plane, and there's just this massive harshness to that trip, to getting off that plane, dealing with, people in Israel deal with a lot. They have a lot of stress and things that happen to them, and they have their reasons if they're defensive and a more aggressive culture. And it's a different culture. It's an ancient culture. It's wild. It's not really all that clean all the time. We can go, like my husband and I, we'd be like, go into this convenience store, which nothing in Israel is actually convenient, to be honest. And it would be like this pile of dirty boxes in the corner, and the wall hadn't been washed. Now here in America, I live in North America, here in the United States. And like that would be a health violation or whatever, right? They would never let. But Israel's different. You have to earn Israel. You have to walk in and work for it. You're not going to be comfortable in Israel. You'll be comforted. But in a way deeper than a soft cushion. Believe me, it's not a soft cushiony place. It's driving miles and miles of just desert and sand and all the same color. I love it. My husband loved it. Not everybody loves that. They don't all think, oh, that's not Key West or whatever. This is an incredible land of wildness and like dirty, desert, desperate, remote, crowded, crazy, harsh, beautiful, prayer, soulful. The experience just stretches the bandwidth of your humanity, to my knowledge, from my experiences. But it isn't what you expect. It will be a million other things. It'll be better things. But you will not go there and not be changed in some way. Because it's primitive. In a certain way, there's something beautifully primitive about it. Just something about it. But it's not the rigid, sterile, double-day book, devotional calendar that you did each morning to check off the box. You're going to have an encounter. And it might be on a donkey. It might be on a tour bus. It might be in an Arabic gift shop. It might be in a on the way from your caravan to the dining hall. It might be at a holy site. It might be on the highway. It might be at the airport. I don't know. But Israel's an encounter. And it's a reminder that God isn't just words on a page, and he's not just an idea. He is a parent, and you are his child. And so that was what I wanted to say to you today. I wanted you to remember to not be so hard on yourself if you're in this season of, I can only learn a few things a week, just a couple things. Maybe I just want to watch Bill Cloud and enjoy that and percolate on what he says and let him minister to me. And I just don't plow through 100 chapters that week. That might be where you are. You might just be in a place of prayerful reflection. Maybe you are. I kind of am. I'd say, try to get that portion in. Get help if you need. I hope you have good mentors and people that can bring you something nourishing, to keep your soil nourished and everything that you need. But please don't be so hard on yourself if you're in a season of donkeys. And I just really hope this encouraged somebody today. If one person's encouraged, fine. I've done my job. I've done my job. Let me look at the chat real quick and just see who happens to be here. Sorry about the ring light. I have 2 comments. Let's see if I can, I have a new mouse and Ellen, shalom. How are you? And that is Misty. I'm a ladybug. That's good. I'm an assembler. Yes. Thank you. Yes, that is what we are, assemblers. It's funny because we have a lot of stuff going on where it's like people are talking about we are mini creators, right? Now, I understand a lot of people, they mean well, and I get what they're saying, but I say a different thing because there's only one creator. But do we have the power to assemble the beautiful things he's created for us to have stewardship over? Absolutely. So it might be just an issue of semantics for sure. But I find that an important distinction to make in language because I love my creator and I'm grateful for all that he's created. And I want to continue to find the good, all that's good and true and holy and wonderful. And just bring that into my life. Just walk into it. Just love it. And the things that are unkind and wrong and judgmental and all of those things, I want to leave that away. I want that out of my circle, right? And that's my goal. And so I really hope that you've enjoyed this time today. I have so completely enjoyed this time with you. And remember, the future begins now. New Covenant Path is my website. I'm Dr. Robin Gould. And until we meet next time, I bless you and pray good things for you. And if you're in a season of donkeys, maybe leave some comments on my website and check it out because I really just want to encourage you. So anyway, it's good to see you. I'll see you again next week. Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.